Our first scripture reading is from Isaiah, from the very first chapter. And Steve Davidson is going to read the scripture. Do you want the mic or do you want to come up here? Okay.
So this first reading is from Isaiah, New Revised Standard Version Bible, updated edition. And then with Martha's permission, I'll read it again from the Messenger. And this is typically how we do this in Bible study in the morning. We read it from both Bibles. So, verses from Isaiah 1. Hear the word of the Lord. Humans, what to me is the multitude of your sacrifices? I have had enough of burnt offerings of rams and the fat of fed beasts. Trample my courts no more. Bringing offerings is futile. Burning incense is an abomination to me. New moon and the Sabbath and the calling of convocations? I cannot endure such solemn assemblies with iniquity. They've become a burden to me. I'm weary of bearing them. Wash yourselves and make yourselves clean. Remove your evil deeds from before my eyes. Cease to do evil. Learn to do good. Seek justice. Rescue the oppressed. Defend the orphan. Plead for the widow. And now a more modern version from the Messenger. Quit your worship charades. I can't stand your trivial religious games. Monthly conferences, weekly Sabbaths, special meetings. I can't stand one more. Meetings for this, meetings for that. I hate them. You've worn me out. I'm sick of your religion, while you go right on sinning. When you put on your next prayer performance, I'll be looking the other way. No matter how long or loud or often you pray, I'll not be listening. And do you know why? Because you've been tearing people to pieces and your hands are bloody. Go home and wash up. Clean up your act. Sweep your lives clean of your evil doings, so I don't have to look at them any longer. Say no to wrong. Learn to do good. Work for justice. Help the down and out. Stand up for the homeless. Go to bat for the defenseless.
Amen. Okay. And now Hebrews, with Hilary Cheever.
Chapter 11, verses 1 through 3 and 8 through 12. Now faith is the assurance of things hoped for, the conviction of things not seen. By faith we understand that the worlds were prepared by the word of God, so that what is seen was made from things that are not visible. By faith Abraham obeyed when he was called to set out for a place that he was to receive as an inheritance, and he set out, not knowing where he was going. By faith he stayed for a time in the land he had been promised, as in a foreign land, living in tents, as did Isaac and Jacob, who were heirs with him of the same promise. By faith, with Sarah's involvement, he received power of procreation, even though he considered him faithful who had promised. Therefore, from one person, and this one as good as dead, descendants were born, as many as the stars of heaven and as the innumerable grains of sand by the seashore.
And you know, by faith, this congregation was started by the Martins and the Blackmores and other people who are here too. And that's a wonderful thing. And by faith, our friends Chakey and Jeffrey came here and landed in this country and then finally came to McFarland, our joy. And the young people have reached out, and by faith, the calling committee called Brian to come, and by faith, he said, yes, I'll come. And now, by faith, he's going on to some other wonderful pursuits. So now it's your turn to read. So we're going to read from Luke 12:32 to 34. So here we go. Do not be afraid, little flock, for it is your Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom. Sell your possessions and give alms, making purses for yourselves that do not wear out, an unfailing treasure in heaven, where no thief comes near or no moth destroys. For where your treasure is, there will your heart be also. I love that little flock. And I'm sure it was to the early community, but it could be for us, our little flock. And Matt Laney, who writes in the daily devotions, said one time about this verse, think about what it is that, not your possessions, but what possesses you, what keeps your attention, what you give your all to. And it may not be God, but it is a God. I thought, well, that's very good to hear. Okay, so now we're going to go into our stories. So I invite the storytellers. Lily's already up here. So I invite, you may come up here if you wish, or stay there. Lynne, why don't you come on up here? Lynne is our first storyteller. I met Lynne when she was giving Christmas presents out from the Christ the Thing Catholic Church. And then I saw her at some other volunteer thing, and another volunteer thing, and another volunteer thing. She is maybe Miss Volunteer. Anyway, she's one of our newest members, just joined on the service when Brian left. So Lynne's going to share a story with us. Thank you, Lynne, for doing this. So welcome, Lynne. Yeah.
Okay, Tom, is this okay? I was given direction. Martha got a hold of me and told me Heather would not be here. Did not know that she was going to have an emergency this morning, but this might not be what Martha asked me to speak about, but I'm doing it. I'm going to talk about why I was drawn to become a member or get involved with McFarland United Church of Christ initially. About 100 years ago, or maybe a few years less, we were asked at the former church I was at to become a part of the Interfaith Hospitality Network, which was a program for homeless families that we provided housing for from Sunday afternoon until the next Sunday morning. And of the three churches, this was the smallest capacity of how they could have people come in. And there are 15 churches around Dane County at that time that housed families. So this church chose to be the hosts, the smallest of the three churches. Our guests came in on Sunday nights, and out in that room, there were dividers set up for families to stay. That's where they stayed for the time they were here, with beds, with no privacy, nothing. They would say, oh, we can't stay here. But I'd say, how about tonight you stay? Tell them at the office tomorrow that you can't do this. They'll make other arrangements. But next Sunday morning, you tell me if you really want to leave. They never wanted to. I was one of the coordinators, and I did many overnighters at this building and at 5 others across Dane County. This is one of my favorites. 6 p.m. to 7 a.m., we had the guests here, and then they were picked up by a van and taken back to the main office. The guests without weekend passes were invited to cook Saturday night dinner. They planned the meal and they cooked the meal. And I have never seen so much grease come out of that kitchen in my years of being here. But they had a ball. It was the only church that they got to pick a meal, cook the meal, and I think we had to clean up, though. They didn't do that part, as my memory goes. Okay. So I knew that I have been coming here for different events, but as one of the readings for today states, learn to do good, seek justice, rescue the oppressed. This is what this church means to me. It is a church of action, not just talking about it. And the thought for the day, don't be a funnel, be a bowl. Fill yourself up first with the special graces and then pass it on. Thank you.
That's just great. Do you have any questions that you want to ask our dear Lynne? Oh. Microphone in the way, in your water. Could you lean forward just a little bit? Thank you. Okay, our next storyteller is Lily. You all know Lily, those of you who are coming here, known her. And she's going to share her thoughts.
Hi, I'm Lily. And I've been coming here since I was a very little baby with my grandma. I didn't really have a choice because I was a little baby. But since I was little, I've always loved coming here. It's just been like my favorite place to be. And me and my grandma are pretty much the only people who have faith in the family. None of my other family really does. So it's just kind of me and her thing. And then just going throughout the years, coming to church has been so much fun. And I've done so many things with this church. And then last year, we went to Nashville. And I made a lot of friends and different relationships with the people that went, especially in that semi-truck we were in. It was very hot. And then just recently, my best friend Grace started coming. She's just the best. I love her so much. And And she's just the best friend I could ever have. She told me, I don't really like church, but you like church, so I'll like church for you. And it was just super sweet, and she's just the best. And she's really helped me a lot for the past 2 years that we've known each other. Because, like she said in the past, the day I fell down in her mom's classroom is the day she knew I was her best friend. I knocked over 2 desks, and she laughed before she helped me up. So that's how we just started. And yeah, so I just love this church so much. And yeah.
Thank you so much. We're awfully glad that you've been here and stayed here and continue to be here. And bring grace. Yes.
This is very sentimental, but you made me cry.
It's okay. There's Kleenex right behind you. Our third storyteller is Paul. Paul has the wonderful photography that's out there, and it would be wonderful to hear you talk about that photography, but he's not going to talk about that now. But anyway, we're so glad that you are here to tell your story.
Thank you. Thanks very much. I'm glad that we're sitting because I have trouble standing if it's more than an hour. So get ready. No, seriously, I think it'll be quite a bit shorter than that. I want to start this with a little disclaimer. You know, the disclaimer is where they put it on the product and say, don't do this and don't do that, or we're not going to cover you or whatever. My disclaimer is that I'm well aware that there is probably not a person in this room or in this congregation who has not had an event in their life which was a shock to them and led to fear and bewilderment. And the presentation I'm giving today is about those things, but I do not intend it to be anything other than a personal recounting of what I and my family went through. It's not meant to compare yourself to, it's not meant to judge. It's just meant to listen. So let's start. The date is July 3rd, 1996. I'm lying on an examination table at my doctor's office, and I'm looking up as he begins to palpate my chest and my abdomen, and I'm watching his face. And his face begins to change as he does that. And he says to me, And then he does some more, and he says, And then when he's done with all that, he says to me, there's definitely something there. And we need to get a CT for you as soon as possible. And the lead up to this is that over the course of the year before that, I had been having a gradual weight gain, and I had developed a cough, which was very strange. I would cough, and I would feel a fluttering here in my abdomen. And that had gotten worse because the family had just gone on a vacation to China because my son was working in China. So all of us got together and had a wonderful, wonderful tour. But there was one problem with the tour, and that was the food. This was around the time China was just opening up to tourists. So anyway, long story short, each day when we had meals, there would be this large Lazy Susan, and on there would be about 30 dishes, none of which was recognizable as food. And so most of our people on our trip didn't eat very much. And I was one of those people. I didn't eat very much on that tour. But after the tour, guess what? Everyone else lost weight. I did not. So that was tip-off number one. And tip-off number two was that my cough also got worse. So going back to what the doctor said, you need a CT right now. He set it up. I had it within a week, which is that's a marvelous thing in these days. But this was in 1996, so we got it. And my memory is that he called and said, the CT is in, it looks very serious. And I want you to see this urologist who does surgery next week. And he set up the appointment. So we went to the appointment, and I do have to tell this one, even if it goes more than 5 minutes. This guy had an office that was about as large as about a third of that size of the wall there. And it was filled with heads of animals. I mean, he was a hunter, a big hunter. And when we went in there, Margaret just about had a conniption. And she made a comment about it, and he said to her, well, these are only here because my wife won't let me keep them at home. So needless to say, we liked them right away. And he went on to explain to us what was on the CT. And what it was is that there was a very rare cancer that had overtaken most of my abdomen. It had wrapped around one of my kidneys, and it was a very rare one. And they thought that probably was something that's never been seen very often at UWA hospitals. Anyway, long story short, he called immediately, changed his schedule for Monday. He said, I don't care how many people you have to cancel, I want to do this. So he did. So we went in Monday, and the surgery was, my memory is somewhere around 5 hours. But of course I was asleep, so I don't know. Anyway, recovery was a fairly long recovery, but he came in fairly early on to tell me what he had found. And basically this was what was called a retroperitoneal liposarcoma, fatty tumor that started behind the lining of the abdomen. And it had wrapped itself completely around the kidney, which, by the way, was sitting there happily functioning with all this going on around it. So he said that the tumor was 22 pounds, and it took him all that time to get it out, and that there's a thing they do when they take out a tumor, and that is, once they get the tumor out, they take some samples from where the tumor touched. These are called margins. All of my margins were positive for cancer. And he said, this is not a good idea to have this. And I said, yes, you're right, I can see that. So he said, I want to have you see an oncologist and get working on this thing right away. And he'll guide you on where you go from here. I was 12 days in the hospital because they couldn't get my digestive tract operating again for that amount of time. But finally, when they did, while I was in there, the oncologist came and talked with me and with Margaret. And over that and subsequent meeting the next week, I think, we talked about options. First option was to get a consult from radiology. And radiology took one look at that situation. They said, I'm sorry, no way, can't do this. It's too long, too big a field. It would just kill you. And they said, no. Okay, so that was number one. Number two was to possibly get a second opinion. And our oncologist had 5 or 6 different options. We chose Houston, which is MD Anderson. You may have heard of that. We went there. They looked at my records. They looked at me. They examined me. And they said, you know, this is a really rare tumor. We don't see very many of these. And we don't know if there's anything that's going to treat it. But we do have these 2 drugs that we can offer you. And it would be chemotherapy, and it would take a long time. And you would have very serious problems with side effects. And you probably wouldn't be able to go back to work, maybe who knows how long. So anyway, the first drug they explained was heart toxic. In other words, it would give you problems with your heart. And then we said, okay, fine. What about the second one? Well, the second one was kidney toxic. Oh, yes. I only have one of those. So we really looked at that and said, at the moment we said, boy, that doesn't sound very good. But we said, we're going to go home and think about it. Well, he was unhappy because we weren't going to start right away. But we did it. We went home. And we talked more with our oncologist. And he talked about those are basically the possibilities that you have, except for one other one. And we said, what? He said, well, the actual survival rate from this kind of a tumor is usually only 2 years or so. It usually grows back either there or in the lungs. But there is a 20% survival rate. And maybe you'll be one of those. So we started thinking about it. And I had, after the 12 days in the hospital, I had time to think about that a lot because my recovery was another 6 or 7 weeks. And we began thinking about that, and I talked with Margaret about it. And her stance was, you know, yeah, this is going to affect us all, but this has to be your decision, not mine. And I understood that. So we continued to talk about it. I continued to think about it. And the more I thought about it, and the more we talked about it, okay, if you just have 2 years, what are you going to do with it? Well, do you want to be taking chemotherapy and make your life terrible and probably not have effects anyway? Well, maybe not. So maybe we ought to take a chance. We ought to take a chance on this. So we decided to do that. And I had been developing, during that time, I had been developing a feeling inside that that was the way to go. Now, it's not like God talked to me and said, you should do that. It was that it just became more like a feeling that, yes, this is what I have to do. So we set it up with our oncologist, and it consisted of a monthly x-ray and a quarterly CT scan. So we started on that. First one was clear, and the second one was clear, and the next one was clear. Long story short, it continued for 3 years to be clear. So we stopped. Now that was 29 years ago. And I have not had a relapse of that cancer yet. And I really am, I am really so grateful because that was the way we went. And I really do think that was a message from God somehow. And what's happened since then is that I've had a deeper belief in God, and I see Him more often in my life operating. And I've had lots of time to enjoy some really great things. And I've also had a lot of time to make some really bad mistakes. Really bad mistakes. And maybe sometime we'll talk about those. But anyway, part of what happened was I got a real appreciation for nature and for what nature is, and some of that's hanging on the wall out there. And basically, we have lived life so that we're living more in the moment, and it has been a good thing. So, fear, shock first of all, fear, bewilderment, what are we going to do? And then a leap of faith. Now, it could have been another direction, and who knows, maybe that would have worked out. But the point is, we went where we went, and it went well. So we're all very grateful. And that's where it is. That's my story.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that with us. Thank you all for sharing your stories with us. Do you have questions for any of our storytellers? Any questions out there? If not, I have something for you to do. If you were to summarize what you've heard or what you feel or your reaction, what would be a summary in just one word? Hope? Faith? Listen. Trust. Loving. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. We all have stories in our lives. Everybody has a story. Everybody has something new, some new challenge, and we'll all have more challenges in the future, I'm sure. But thank you so much for sharing these stories. They're really powerful. Thank you so much. We're going to close now with a hymn that's Forward Through the Ages. And it's just a song about forward through the ages, how faith has guided everybody. And you think of your own ancestors, and there's been times of faith that they've gone through too. So we're going to sing that, and then we'll close the service. Thank you very much. Thank you all. Thank you all.